Welcome to How the Song Came to Be, where soulful songwriters share the stories behind their songs, as well as tools and creative practices you can use to bring your best songs or other creative works to life. I'm Ann Heaton, your host. Welcome to How the Song Came to Be. I'm Ann Heaton, your host. Today's episode is part of To the Light First Thursdays of the Month, where I present a song from my new album, share the story behind it, and also some reflection questions for you to ponder. The truth is that last Thursday was really the first Thursday of the month, but because of COVID-19, I really wanted to present something that was particularly relevant to that. And so I spoke with Dr. Shivo Ghosh, who is a developmental behavioral pediatrician. He's also a songwriter and musician, and he shared some tips with us about how to stay safe during this time. So if you'd like to check that out, that's last week's episode. So instead, today is going to be the To the Light Thursday, and I'm going to share the song Joy and the story behind it, as well as some reflection questions. So it's interesting because for a long time, I wanted to host like a book music club, like a small group in people's living rooms where we could gather and I could share a little music, share a few stories, and then we could together answer the questions in the book. And these questions in the book, which I'll hold up for those of you who are watching on video, the questions in To the Light, which you can buy a copy on my website. It's super easy to find. The questions are, they're not really about the book. They're personal. They point toward you, the reader. Things like, what brings you joy? What are you able to connect to joy when you're going through challenging circumstances? Is there a way to do that? All questions like that are really more personal. And I believe that when we know ourselves better, we are happier. And when we know ourselves better, our society can evolve. And part of the reason that I wanted to host this group and have this sharing is so that I think that when we hear other people's answers and we hear their sharing, it's really like a mirror back to us. And so last night we did a test run of this music book club on Zoom, and it was really, really, really fun, and it felt great. And basically today I'm going to share with you pretty much what I shared last night. And if this is something that's interesting to you and you would like to join, just feel free to email me and let me know you'd like to be invited. It's free, and I will invite you into the book music club. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read the story behind the song Joy, which I'm also choosing to share today because when I wrote this song, I was not feeling joy. I was feeling everything but joy. And I know for a lot of people right now, there are a lot of emotions. I think there are highs and significant lows and everything in between. And so even though this song is not born out of these particular circumstances of being shut in during COVID-19, I think it relates somehow. So here we go. Oh, gotta put my glasses on. Here we go. In January 2017, my neighbor Susie suggested I write a song for the DC Women's March, a sing-along for the bus. I said no. I didn't think I could do it, but the idea wouldn't let me go. I grieved that prior year while watching the news, worrying about the kind of world my 5- and 7-year-old daughters would grow up in. Like many others, I didn't want my mood, energy level, and contributions to be influenced by ongoing negative narratives. I wanted to remember what connects all of us in a time where media told us we were irrevocably divided. I reflected on my truth outside of a state of reaction. What's important to me? How do I connect to my deepest self and values? How does the way I start my day affect everything else? At the last minute, I was invited to play a small concert near the march, hosted by Natalia and Ariana Zuckerman, and including artists such as Mona Tabacoli, Chaska Potter, Edie Carey, Becky Gephardt, Sarah Bush, and Sarah Bareilles. This inspired me to finish the song in time to play it for these women. I turned and looked squarely at my fears, feeling how tender and vulnerable it felt to be raising girls at this time. I also reflected on my love of nature and the quiet of morning. I considered the people who were making a positive impact, like Amma, who gives hugs worldwide, Bill Gates and his invitation to innovate to zero emissions, and Pope Francis's call to extend mercy. A woman whose email list I happen to be on, Carol C.C. Miller, who frequently organized free hug days, even wove her way into the song. Joy was born out of my desire to reconnect with what I love, to be rooted in the essential goodness and calm that's always there for us, though sometimes it's deep below the waves. Okay, here comes the song. Here's Joy. I've got nothing against you. I just want to be heard. Like every child, woman, and man in this big, beautiful world. I knew boys like you in high school. Thought if I ignored, you'd go away. But what I fear grows, what I resist persists. I need joy to be my best. How do I look on you with joy in my heart? Look on you with joy. I get up before the sunrise, look at the stars in the night sky. I breathe in and out slowly, letting my fears rise up out of me like smoke floating over the sea. I find the joy in my heart early, open my eyes to the birds and the trees. I feel joy in my heart, joy. Race. Knew at 4 I'd not retaliate against the bomb if up to me, cause then there'd be no place to be. Oh no, not a gun in every school, digging in the oceans for dirty fuel, backing out of what we agreed to when I fear the worst. With joy in my heart, joy in my heart. Way you look at something changes things. Way you look at something changes things. The way you look at something changes things. So who you gonna be? How you gonna see? Some say it's mercy, others give hugs for free. Some try to get us to zero. Kids in New York from every land who don't know any different. They're laughing and holding hands while parents watch them play. With joy in their hearts, joy in their hearts, joy in the world. With joy in our hearts, joy in the world. Joy in our hearts.
Breathe in and out slowly.
Hey, so I hope you enjoyed that. I would also love to read the creativity key that unlocked that song for me. At the end of each chapter in the book, I include the creativity key that really helped me be able to connect to the song. And I think this is fitting for right now because it's the creativity key of intimacy. And so many of us are at home right now, not able to go to work if we're not working on the front lines, or doctors, nurses, medical professionals, or grocery stores. So many people need to go to work, but a lot of us who have been asked to stay home, we really have a chance to connect with ourselves and our loved ones, maybe more than we normally would. So I'll share this. To write this song, I had to get cozy with my greatest fears, with what fills up my heart, and with what helps me transcend my daily circumstances. By peeling back the layers of the generalized anxiety I felt, I found vulnerability, hope, and a desire to invite others to do the same. And I don't know if you feel like this, but having all this time at home, there are ways in which, in life as usual, there are so many ways we can distract ourselves from emotions or memories that come up. We can push them back down. We can take a drive. We can be very busy. And so there's a way when you diminish busyness that a lot can come up. So before I go through and ask these reflection questions, I know some of you maybe listen to podcasts while you're doing the dishes or making dinner, so you might not be able to write down the answers. But if you're someone who's listening and just sitting and drinking tea or having a coffee, I would invite you to grab a journal, pen or pencil, and just jot down what comes to mind. It's just an opportunity to maybe discover something new about yourself that you think or feel that you may not be aware of, or remind yourself of something you already know. And then if you are someone who listens while you're doing other things, maybe something will just come to you, a little gem. So before we do that, I just want to invite everyone to take a couple of deep breaths. And if you're sitting down, really kind of see what that feels like where you're sitting. And if you're standing, feel your feet. Yeah, just a few deep breaths. And I shared this in the book club last night. It was something that came to me. Oftentimes when someone asks me a question, there's many different levels I could answer from. And, like if I compare myself to the lake or to an ocean and there's waves on top, I could answer the question from the level of the waves, and that would be true. But I could also say there's a coral reef below the waves, in the ocean, a little further down. And maybe that coral reef is teeming with life, right? Or maybe it's not, maybe it's dying, but nobody can see it from the surface of the water. So maybe I could answer the question from the level of the coral reef, or perhaps there's a big blue whale swimming deeper down in the ocean. And I could answer the question from that level. And all of those answers would be true. But they're all part of the story and part of the story of the ocean, the health of the ocean, right? If I'm comparing myself to the ocean. So the reason I like to invite people to take a few deep breaths as I think it just helps have more awareness what those different levels of the self are when you go to answer these questions. So the first question is simply, what brings you joy? What brings you joy? And again, I know this is a podcast, so people don't often pause podcasts, but if you are writing the answers down, I would encourage you to just pause and take your time. What brings you joy? The next question is, when, if ever, has a painful experience brought about a transformation or change in circumstances that led to more joy in your life? When, if ever, has a painful experience brought about a transformation or change in circumstances that led to more joy in your life? The next question is, in what ways do you experience joy outside of your circumstances? In what ways do you experience joy outside of your circumstances? And what I mean by that is, you can never be entirely outside of your circumstances, but in what ways do you experience joy that aren't dependent upon, say, the job you have or the relationship you're in? Or are there ways that you connect with joy that are not tied to daily circumstances? And if so, what are those? Yeah, and again, just pause it and take your time if you're writing these. The next question is, in what ways do you experience joy because of your circumstances? In what ways do you experience joy because of your circumstances? What are those? And the last question is it possible to generate joy? Is it possible to generate joy? And if so, how? So that was the one that really, I did write that question, but when I went to answer it last night, it did stump me for a moment. I thought, yeah, is it possible to generate joy? And some of the answers people shared last night were really, really interesting. For me, I think the main ways that I'm able to generate joy for myself are to have a meditation practice, because I know my mind can get into kind of like a habitual way of thinking, right? It's just kind of on a track. And if that track is a little bit negative or kind of closed off to new information or new experiences, then I need something to kind of break through that. And for me, that's meditation. I can sort of watch my brain, and then there'll just be a little bit of space between what my brain is doing and me, the witness of what my brain is doing. And the other way I believe that I am able to generate joy is to do something totally different and new. Go to a new place, try a new food, walk a different direction on the morning walk, just something different, learn something new. That seems to break up that path, the habitual mental patterns. But I would love to know what your answer is to that question, if joy can be generated. So with that, I will leave you. Feel free to send me any reflections that you have, and if you would like to be invited to the book and music club, which I believe is going to happen on Tuesday evenings. We did a little test run, like I mentioned last night. It was super fun. And we will meet on Zoom. Then feel free to send me an email and I will send you an invite. If you'd like to get a copy of the book and the CD so you can kind of follow along and maybe you can write the answers in your book. There's space for that. You can do that on my website, which is anneheaton.com. And yeah, it's been really nice to be here today talking about joy and sending you lots of love. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you know someone who would enjoy or benefit from this podcast, please share it with them. Thanks so much. Much love.